Welcome back, and now I am joined by our special guest on News Review today, Mustafa K. Dabo, investigative journalist. I know a lot of you people have been asking who the special guest is today. It is Mustafa Dabo, and we'll be discussing on his latest brilliant piece titled "Investors Who Do Not Invest: How They Access the State House of the Gambia, Lands a Diplomatic Passport, and Even Love." Welcome to the Fatu Network, Mustafa Dabo.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
For the sake of our viewers, give us a background on this story, because we might just be talking about it and then a lot of people will be asking what we are talking about. But just for the sake of our viewers out there, tell us about this story.
So actually, we began the story in 2019, September, when the diplomatic passport began leaking online. A number of passports were leaked, so we decided at the initial point to start to look into how the passports were leaked and were accessed by the people, by foreigners. So when that happened, so we started looking into the passports. So and the passports eventually led us to Reni, and Reni led us to Smart Cars, and Smart Cars led us to EXW Capital. So that is how we got to be in this ring that we eventually wrote about.
As a journalist, why was it important for you to pursue this story?
Well, it's important because you see the issue of the diplomatic passport. Let's call it what it is. It's a national security issue. National security is not defined by government or some boogeyman at the SIS. National security is defined by issues that jeopardize this common security of our country. And that's what this thing is. If you look at the issue, you realize that a number of foreigners had access to our diplomatic passport. But it's more complex than that. There are a number of foreigners who were legally issued, but there are those also who were illegally issued
passports.
And some of those were, you remember when Jammeh left in this country, the government took total transparency in publishing the number of passports he issued.
Yes.
271. What Barrow issued was 1,175.
Which we will come to later.
But not just that. These were issued to political aides, youth movement members, marabouts, and plethora of a number of people from all walks of life. We thought that it was important that we scrutinized not just that list, but also the foreigners on those lists. And then we were attracted to names that are unfamiliar. For example, the president can give passport to anybody. Let's be clear about it, and it's totally legal. It's legal for Barrow to just look at you and give you the diplomatic passport. He has the power. But then we looked into foreigners who had access to our passports. And then we came to learn that, in fact, there was close to 2,000 of our diplomatic passport empty books that were unaccounted for at the foreign ministry, and over 3,000 of our service passports that were unaccounted for at the same ministry. And this was reportedly in the black market and being printed for cash. So that means that we don't even have the database of the number of people who are going around with our passport. For all we know, an Al-Qaeda member can be going around with a Gambian passport, diplomatic passport, which has been printed for cash. Because the government did not have the database that was in the hands of the person who was illegally printing it. What they do have is their own database. So they even knew. So we thought that this is so important a national security issue that this story has to come out. That somehow a story about these people and about this activity has to be published.
But when you looked at the activity, it was more to the activity, because when you come across certain names who have probably criminal past, then that's where you have the red flag. You're like, they're not just issuing passport to just anybody, but there are people who have shady past who are having access to our national document.
Yes. And then probably to the credit of the government, you may be aware, probably to the credit of the government, we may say that they may not have issued Andreas Brandal and the team. Because what we have evidence of course, we do know the State House met these people, they met with Barrow, but even Henry is on record admitting that. We know also that Mario Dessa was legally issued our passport. Yeah. But we couldn't find the names of Andreas Brandal and others in the list of the 1,175. But what we did was to take their serial numbers of their passports and put in the database. And it took us to the missing service passport books that the Foreign Ministry said is unaccounted for. So the numbers, through the numbers we identified, we established that this is in fact the number of passports that they claim were unaccounted for at the ministry. You see? So that connects the two. So that connects the passports that leaked online, part of them, a large chunk of them, to the illegal printing that was happening in the country. And the authorities were quite not clear about it. They never said this to anybody. But this is the situation. And then that is why some very senior government officer told us that in fact during the crisis, during the coronavirus epidemic and the pandemic, people were not traveling. So they suggested to the Minister of Foreign Ministry that, look, let's revoke all our diplomatic passports. Let's cancel all of them. Let's cancel all our service passports. Let's publish the names. Let's issue a statement and publish names. And send these names all over the world and say any passport issued from the Gambia or from the Gambian authorities between 2017 to 2022.
It's invalid.
It's invalid. It doesn't matter what it is, service or diplomatic. And anybody carrying it is doing it with criminal intent. It's not a diplomat of the Gambia government or an employee of the Gambia government. You understand? This would have been easy during the pandemic. People were not traveling. And then you issue new ones. But as it is right now, it's polluted. And you can't even know who is holding our passport. For all we know, some guy carrying a bomb in the desert could be carrying our diplomatic passport.
So we have
that is why I was not surprised when some people said Banka Keita had a diplomatic passport. Because the people who said he does not have are people like me who are looking into the Foreign Ministry's formal passport database. The 1,000. How about the ones that were printed outside of the government? How do you know he doesn't have that? And if he does have that, then you are chasing someone with a diplomatic passport you don't even know.
So we have people with questionable past all over our national document, excuse me. And then we have these people actually going into the State House and having photo-ops with the president of this country. First of all, Mustafa, how are these so-called foreign investors accessing our State House?
So you see, the problem with this whole thing is a country ought to be serious. And when you are talking about seriousness of the government, you're not talking about a political party or political leadership. It goes beyond NPP or the Barrow administration or things like that. It goes to the foundation of the Gambian Republic. You see, people ought to be serious about government. Government is about our lives. When the government does not function, it's lives that are threatened. It's a matter of life and death. Now, when we have to have a standard, how do you even invite some people in because they wrote to you and said they are investors? What has an investor got to do at State House? The president is the most important person in the state. It's disrespectful to write to us and say you want to talk to our president about what? If you want to do an investment, you want to invest in energy, go to GAIPA. Go to public-private partnership. Go to NAWEC. Those are the people who have something. The president is a supervisor. The president calls ministers and say, look, guys, what do we have in this area? But you supposed to do this, you didn't do it. The president is a supervisor. President is not the guy in charge of investment. You want to invest, what are you doing at State House? That's the first thing that is no serious country in human history entertains. And people have to be involved in this kind of matters. It has to be all civil servants, protocol officers, one person from the last person in government to the top person in government rejecting behaviors like this. Because as the former American president says, yes, it's a republic if you can keep it. If we don't if there is no participatory democracy, not everyone is focused on governance, not everybody rejects what is not supposed to happen, we're never going to get anywhere. Because for all we know, given the political parties we have currently, things are not likely to change here.
And someone whose name came up is Henry Gomez, an advisor to the president on youth matters. Now, in this piece, you actually challenge Henry on the charge that he did not do the minimum due diligence before leading these people to the president. And you know, Henry, he's always has a response.
Yes, you know.
He always has a response.
By the way.
And the response is funny and sad.
Yeah, well, you know, as Henry himself said, you know, I am his mbitang, so, you know, I want to be easy on him. But the truth is that, see, that's where we go to also institutions. Henry is a youth advisor to the president. And then Henry brings
investors
to
the
president. And then ministers in connection to this so-called investment are not at the meeting, GAIPA not at the meeting, public-private partnership department not at the meeting. That's the first problem. If they were serious about this thing, and it's not about something else we don't know, I don't see any reason why that meeting would have in the first place even taken place.
But his response that he was impressed with what was put before him, and that was his reason for him to lead these people to the president. What do you make of that?
Well, in this country, when someone shows up and is a white man, and he has a folder or a very cute bag, he is welcomed. Yeah, I think it's inferiority complex. Yeah.
And when you raise the issue of the investors going through GAIPA and other institutions that are put in place for those kind of things, and not the president, Henry responded by saying, so you want to tell me that all the investors who came during Jawara and Jammeh's time went through GAIPA? What kind of signal is he trying to send there?
Well, it's just saying, well, others did it, so we also going to do it. I think that's the situation. Others did it, we're going to do it. But he actually is not saying this is the right thing to do. At some point in the interview, in fact, because we didn't publish the audio is very long, it's about an hour. We didn't publish the whole interview, but what he did say after that was that, maybe that's the good practice, but they didn't do that. But hopefully, probably they will learn from that. What I do learn from it is that when institutions don't function, the state is doomed, because Office of the President, they did, and this is deliberate. It's not for nothing that we take investors to State House, quote unquote investors to State House. We do it for a reason, and that's what needs to stop. Yeah, that's what needs to stop, because it does not encourage the kind of governance infrastructure we want to put in place. And they don't understand. When people like me talk about this, when we talk about the deficiencies in our state, we're talking about my life, your life, their lives, their children's lives. You know, when the state is doomed, it's taken over by corrupt people, it's taken over by criminals, it's taken over by drug cartels, no one is spared. It's like a pandemic. When Corona, for example, shuts down the world, aircrafts grounded, everything grounded. Anybody who got sick in this country, doesn't matter if you have $5 billion in your account, you die here. If there is no enough facility to cure you here, you die here, right? Mm. That's the reason why we need to create a state that is efficient, a state that is able to treat its own people, a state that is able to feed its own people, a state that is able to employ, shelter its own people. And we do that by working, by showing some degree of seriousness. And that's why people like me keep working on things like this, because it's important, so that, you know, and it's not just me, there are a lot of people who are disgusted by this. I can assure you, I mean, you know, lawyers, politicians, I can't say so much about Gambia's politicians, but you know, you have some serious people in government, and you have some serious people in civil society, in journalism, who are disgusted at the state of affairs.
So let's take a look at the unusual and the strange thing, like you worded it in the piece, because in a normal democracy and in a normal setup, you would expect that these kind of meetings will be communicated to the Gambian people, televised or something like that. But this was not the situation in this case.
So actually, things like this don't get televised, because things like these are meetings that ought to happen in the background. I think that's the nature of affairs. But it can explain the motive, perhaps. Yeah, but ordinarily, in a lot of situations, things like this don't get televised.
And you think they should? Because
there should be, because you see, unless we understand why we set up a government, that's the beginning. We set up a government as a collective investment. It's your dalasi, my dalasi, everyone's dalasi that runs the government. That's what it is. Government is a joint business of all the citizens. And we establish that joint business to hire army to protect us, to hire civil servants to work for us and issue and give us services, deliver services. That's the reason why we have a government. So government is supposed to serve the people, not just stop at that. Report to them. That's where accountability comes. Government needs to serve the people. When it's done doing its job, report to them that this is what I have done with this money you give us, this, that, and that. That's what governance is. If we don't have that, we can abolish this and go back to our ancient ways. What is stopping us to live up to this or live in some village and stuff? If government does not serve us, what's the purpose keeping it? It's like putting your money in a bankrupt company that keeps getting bankrupt. What's the point? You're stupid. Yeah. So this is the reality. People need to understand that, and people become. I felt angry when people meet me in the street and say congratulations. It's as if I've won a trophy. I did not report so that I become a hero.
Or become a hero.
Yes, I report so that you know, and we fix it. That's why I report. If it's becoming a hero, I would do better by being, I think I can do football.
We know you can, so let's not talk about that. And one other important thing that I want us to highlight, Mustafa, is two institutions who stood their ground in this entire situation, which is the Justice Ministry and, of course, the Ministry of Agriculture. Because in a situation like this, you would expect them to just fall for it. Oh, these are just foreign investors and they're here to support our government. And then what's wrong with that? So we are going with it. But these people stood their ground and said, no, hold on. This is too good to be true. What do you think of that?
Well, because you see, the reality is that when someone comes to you, Sajo, I mean, even if you are not a journalist, and say, I want to invest. We want to invest 200 million euros in your country. On what? Or renewable energy, we want to do horticulture, renewable energy. 200 million euros. And the person has shown you no financial records. He has not shown you any evidence of any investment he has made anywhere in the world. He showed you nothing. Just a colorful document of, oh, we have drones, we have this, we have that. Of course, yeah. I mean, anybody can learn how to say things. right? That's where seriousness begins. So Justice Ministry will be foolhardy. I mean, I think Batambedi is a smart guy. You know, it would be totally ridiculous if he is part of this. I mean, think about it. I mean, I think he's a smart guy, right? And I think the guys at agriculture did not just stood their ground for anything, because it is what it seems, ridiculous. That's what it is. You know, someone comes and tells you, I want to invest in your country, but I want your president to give me a stamp letter of recognition, approval and recognition. To do what with that? You need that to invest?
That's not a genuine investment.
You don't even need that to invest. Nobody needs a stamp approval letter from president of any country to invest. No one needs that. So when you have things like that, it's enough. And goodness, you can't Google some stuff and see what anybody is saying about these people. What's your website? Just go there, check the website. It's supposed to give you a clue, you know. But this is what we found.
So do you think these two ministries deserve some sort of commendation from the Gambian people?
Well, I don't commend people for doing their job. It's like commending me for doing what I do. I do my job. It's my job. It's what they want, what they should do. People who don't do what they should do, they should in the first place do that. You know what I mean? Yeah. They did what they're supposed to do.
So this is not your first investigative report. We've seen the first one, which involved the Water Resources Ministry, when the permanent secretary was involved in a corruption scandal. And it seemed like the process has been slowed on trying to bring them to account. So we can say that nothing came out of that thing. What do you expect from this report, Mustafa?
You see, there is a reason why nothing comes out of nothing, anything in this country. It's because it's the impulse. People are not angry. Like I said, people don't understand why they have a government. People don't understand that. The government, no one is doing anyone a favor here. We've put together money and established some company so that it serves us. That's the reason why we've established. So in Senegal, when BBC Africa did an investigation about Macky Sall and his involvement with Petrono and all this thing, it's Macky Sall's brother, people were angry. They went to the street and they protested because people took interest in their own affairs. People in Senegal understood the language of democracy, that this institution here exists to serve me. If it doesn't, we don't need it. Let's get rid of it. That's what they understand. That impulse, that anger is not in the Gambia. And look at it, the silence. Have you ever had any political party? Have you ever seen any political party talk about anything in this country other than elections? Because they're all the same. And this is what is angry. It's most annoying about it. Like, have you ever seen any corruption scandal in this country without political interest? Any opposition party in this country talks about. In Senegal, a simple news story that's about public sector corruption, it's like the world is going to end. Everybody talks about it, from political parties to civil society to the bars. Everybody who takes interest in the defense of the people talks about it, because corruption, it's like a civil war. It kills people. It's life and death. When the money that is supposed to be used to buy medicine is not used to buy medicine, what happens? People die. That's what it is. What we are telling people is that this is a way someone is using to kill us. So what do people do when their lives are threatened? They're supposed to fight back. In this country, what you have is total indifference. If it does not affect you, it's that. It's not your business. Whether you are political party leader, whatever you are, all of them are the same. Really. It's so disheartening sometimes.
It is disheartening, and then reports like these are the reason why sometimes media is thought of as the enemy. I know you've been a journalist for quite a long time now, and you've also served as the vice president of the Gambia Press Union. Recently, just before I let you go, we've seen the president make some statements regarding the media, saying that the media is biased, they don't report on his development projects and stuff like that. What do you make of those statements coming from the president?
Well, you know, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you know, I don't even know what to say. I mean, what is reporting on your development? What is development? What is development that is being done here? Like, what does anybody report on? Like, you know, what, building a road? We don't even need a president to build a road. You just need to go to the bank and tell them that I want Kairaba Avenue to be built. And they go and build it. What development? The school that's built by NGOs? That's what we need to report on? What do we report on? We have, see, this is a country where things don't change. They don't improve, they are deteriorating. And I think the president needs to understand that. This country is an indebted, poor country that relies on charity to survive. That is the reality today. And there is no plan to change it. He doesn't have it. At least if he does, we don't know. Now the reality is that this country imports 155 plus tons of rice. Thousands tons of rice, and we consume about 200,000 tons of rice. So we import 3/3 of what we consume in rice cultivation. What happens if it does not come? People starve and die. Every other thing, every other sector, poverty, it's the same. What changes? So what is there to sing about and what? We go into the newsrooms and are we stupid people? I mean, I don't want to talk about it. It's too political for me. Let's focus on my work.
Thank you very much, Mustafa Dawo, the investigative journalist. Thank you very much for coming through to the Fatu Network News Review. We really appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
Thank you very much. Well, that will be it for News Review today. Do join us tomorrow if you can. Thank you very much.